Hey guys, so I am making yet another video about changing how I'm using my setup with the API box. And I can't stop, searching for better ways to do things, I guess. But the change I'm making now is to a system that many of you have suggested for a long time in the comments, and I've been aware of it as a possibility, but it never seemed right for me, which is I'm going to switch to using the analog processing in hardware inserts on the DAW. And that gives me the benefit of using the DAW faders and fader automation, more importantly, after the analog processing. And that also gives, full archiving and recall as well. So the reason why I never did this before was that, at least with my setup, I'm limited to 16 channels. For me to do more than that would require just an unbelievably larger investment. I would need a bigger console. I would need to double up my converter channels, and I'm just not prepared to do any of that. There's a reason why the SSL Origin is $50,000 and has twice the number of channels. So that's just not on on my schedule, in my budget. So working with what I have, the API box console is really set up there's the right side of the console, just a little review, is designed for summing, and it's 16 channels. There are no direct outputs on these channels. You can only send them to the mix bus. There's no busing. It just does that, and that's it. And so the nice thing is that because API really committed to this being a summing console, that's the right side, there is a fader bypass button, which really does come in handy. And there are hardware inserts on every channel, but my feeling is I'm using this for summing, and it's kind of the whole point is I don't want to have to recall anything on this side. I guess if I had to, it's nice that I can, but I'd really rather not have to. So the summing happens on this side, and then the nice part is you go to the mix bus and you get mix bus processing. There's a hardware insert for putting in your own mix bus hardware. There's the built-in compressor if you decide you want to use that, and it's its own sound. It's stereo 527 compressors. And then there's also the output transformers in the mixer, and that's really controlled by how hard you hit the main output. And they sound great. It's very sensitive, and really getting the right level there makes a huge difference. And the only thing I would say, I don't actually put a lot of stock in analog summing just for the sake of summing. But what I do think is a benefit behind it is the fact that you are running individual instruments through the converters. And in my case, the Lynx Aurora converter, the way it's designed is it has discrete digital analog converters in pairs. So really, each pair is its own individual converter. And that really does add to the quality of sending individual instruments, and then doing the summing here. So for me, I think it does help. But it's not in the summing, it's in the converting that I think really makes the biggest difference. And then, the mix bus processing too. So that's that side. And so even though I'm using the DAW faders, sorry about the blurring, and using the DAW automation, I'm still going to be using output buses to do analog summing. I'm just not going to be touching any levels with it. So for recall, all that's going to be done in the computer. So the actual analog processing, now 8 channels would definitely not be enough. But having the Sidecar mixer of the SSL X-Desk gives me a full 16, and it's a very smooth transition. I just have my 1 through 8, 9 through 16. They actually have very similar features, these two mixers. And honestly, neither one of them is really doing very much to the sound in their own right. What's really affecting the sound the most, not counting the mic preamps, that would only be for recording, but in a mixing capacity, is the equalizers. And in my case, every one of these equalizers has transformers in them, and beyond what you're doing in dialing the EQ, just running through the gear and the transformers in those EQs has a really nice effect on the sound. And in my case, I have these all normaled in the patch bay to these channels, so all I have to do is hit the insert button and it goes to and back. And I'm getting it's the same EQs, I'm getting the same sound, really. And both this side of the API and the X-Desk have direct outputs, so the output fader is controlling the level being sent back to the hardware insert in the DAW. And I can see the levels right here when I'm doing it. Let's see here. So like right now, not that it really matters, but I have the bass on this channel on 9. You can see monitoring my fader level, and my output, sorry for the blur, output is on the bottom, and then the input is on the top. So if I'm moving the fader, pull it down, I can see my return level, and it's not blurry in the room. Sorry about that. And so it's a pretty smooth system. And then I'm running Nuendo, which is Cubase. It's the exact same thing, only it's Cubase with some post-production features. But the way that Steinberg does it, in the audio connections preferences, and sorry if I can get it clear, there we go. There's a tab for external effects, and then I created them and I can save them as favorites. So I have them named. So I have my kick stereo, and then it's very flexible. You tell it which audio device, and then you tell it any channels that you want. Some software and hardware combinations force you to use corresponding hardware channels. So if you go out on 1 and 2, you have to come back on 1 and 2. Steinberg does not do that. You total flexibility, but in this case, I want it to be that way, so it works out fine. But these are all my hardware inserts that I've created. I can just pull them up in any insert position, and this is what comes up as the actual hardware insert. And it's kind of cool. You have send and return levels that you could automate, and then there's a delay measurement. So you can actually, you just press the button and it measures if there's any measurable delay, and it's reading 0.02 milliseconds. So it's totally negligible, but it will compensate for whatever delay there might be. There shouldn't be much, if any, but it does. So that's nice. And that's it. So my hope is, I came to the decision to make this change very organically. It was just that I'm recording through the same analog gear, and there's no reason to hit the same gear twice. So for those instruments that have already been through that gear, I don't have to run them through analog. So I think with that in mind, I can get away with just 16. I do take up at least 8 just for drums, sometimes even 10. We'll see how it works out. I mean, in my situation, I don't have a drum recording setup, so all of my drums are samples. And for me, that means that I found that I need to run samples. I need to keep them stereo because that's how they're recorded. And it does make a big difference to get the full sound, to keep them stereo. So that does take up extra channels, 2 for kick, 2 for snare, etc. But and also just sampled drums, I find really do need that extra analog oomph. So that part is important to me to be able to still do. But you know, electric guitars, things like that. Yeah, I'm really doing that on the way in. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm optimistic that this is going to work out well. And then, you know, when I'm done with the mix, I can just capture the channels that have the analog processing or freeze them or do whatever. But yeah, it should be pretty good. All right, so thank you everyone for tuning in, and you know, I'll let you know how things go. Take care.